Hey friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. You know, I am very lucky. I get to test drive electric cars several times during the course of the year. And whenever one of these babies lands in my driveway, friends and family have a lot of questions. And I'm talking about basic getting to know an electric car kind of questions like, can you drive it in the rain? How far can it go? And how do you charge it? And it really got me to thinking, you know, it's time to do a Q&A video answering the most common questions I get about electric cars. So we're going to run through the top 12 questions I hear every time a friend or family member sees one of these things. So we're going to roll through them. If I don't answer a question you have, put it in the comments section down below and I'll do my best to answer it. Question number one, how much range do they have? That's the big one. Well, the answer is this. In most entry-level to mid-price electric cars right now, that is 80 to 100 miles. And that's rated by the EPA. On the car we're driving right now, it's rated at 93 miles for a range. Now the EPA, they rate all electric cars for range as well as MPGe, which is their way of measuring efficiency, just like they do for gas cars, so you can look that information up. The thing to bear in mind is electric cars typically do better in the city than they do on the highway, conversely to a gas car, which always does better on the highway and uses more gas in the city. And the reason for that is regenerative braking. And that leads us to question number two. What's regenerative braking? Well, the brilliant thing about an electric car is it can use the energy of your motion when you're coasting and slowing down to actually recapture energy and put it back in the battery, which extends your range. And to be clear, this has nothing whatsoever to do with your brakes. Most electric cars have brakes just like every other car. What's happening is it's using the spinning motor as a generator when you're coasting, when you're putting your foot on the brake, to actually recharge the battery while you're on the go. And most electric cars can actually recapture 10 to 15% of the energy spent. That's pretty good. Question number three, what affects range? Well, as I said, driving on the freeway is the most expensive way to spend your electricity because you've got the car pushing through the wind at high speeds, aerodynamic drag, and the motor spinning faster. But think of your car for a moment like a cell phone. If you just talk on it and text on it once in a while, the battery can last pretty long. If you start watching movies, listening to music, surfing the internet, well, that battery life really shortens up. Well, the electric car is much the same way. If you start using the accessories like the headlights, the audio system, and the HVAC, well, you're going to burn through your battery a lot faster. And just like your home, the HVAC in an electric car is the biggest power sucker. These have heat pumps, very similar to some homes, so whether you're heating or cooling, it's using the same amount of power. And in this car, what I found is when I start out with a 100-mile range and I turn that thing off, I get like an extra 5 miles right away on that meter. So what that's telling me is that in this car, I'm using about 5% of my range when I'm using the HVAC. Now, similarly, if I turn on the radio full blast, I'm using the headlights, that's going to cut into your range as well. So that's not to say you should never use these things, but keep that in mind and be mindful of it when you're adding up how many miles you can drive. Now, the other big factor with most electric cars is we've got a mode selector. I've got one here on this car that allows me to choose an eco mode. So when you press that, what happens is the car immediately feels like it's chained to a house. And so what happens is it slows your throttle response. You have to push harder on the accelerator to get more power than you do in normal mode. Also, most importantly, it makes the regenerative braking mode a lot stronger. So when you lift off the accelerator, like right now I'm going down a hill, it actually feels like I'm dragging the brake a little bit because it's really leveraging that regenerative braking more than it does in normal mode. Climate is also a factor. If you live in an extremely cold or an extremely hot climate, the ambient temperature where the car is stored as well as where you drive, it's going to affect the performance of the battery. Just like when you have your regular car on a cold morning, you go to crank the engine, it can be sometimes a little slow to crank over. Well, electric car batteries pretty much feel the same way about extreme temperatures. And the other thing, of course, is you're using your heating and air conditioning, which also shortens the range. So try to keep it indoors where you're charging it and where you're storing it at night. And just keep in mind that extra temperature and the use of the HVAC is also cutting into the range. Question 4, how do you charge your electric car? You know, most cars right now in the market offer 2, and some offer 3 different ways to charge them. The first is the 120 volt power cord. This allows you to plug into any standard wall outlet wherever you are and charge this up. Now this is the slowest way to charge. It can take 12 to 24 hours depending on the car. This is not usually going to be your primary way of charging, but it's a great thing to have if you're out traveling somewhere or if you get stranded at a friend's house. Now the next level up is a level 2 charger, which is 240 volts. That'll be the most common charger that you find for home charging, and of course it is also the most common charger you find at public stations like this one. That'll charge your car in about 4 to 8 hours depending on the car. In this particular case, this car will charge in 5 hours on a level 2 charger, whether it be at home or whether it be at a public station like this. Now the next level, that's a level 3 DC fast charger. Those are 480 volts, not found in too many homes just yet, not only because of their price, but because most homes aren't quite wired for 480 volts just yet. That type of charger you're going to find mostly at public stations like this. That'll charge your car in as little as 30 minutes to an 80% level. That's pretty quick. Question 5, what about those public charging networks? Well, I'm here in Phoenix and we've got the Blink network as well as the ChargePoint networks. Those are the 2 big ones here in town. If you get on plugshare.com, you can see all the different networks and you can get a map of your local area to see how many charges you actually have nearby. And what you might be surprised to find out is even if you don't live in the middle of a large metro area, there might be more chargers than you ever thought. Here in Phoenix, I've got over 500 chargers within the range of this vehicle, and we're not even in a blue state big city. That's pretty impressive, I think. I literally could drive around all day long in this car, never run out of places to stop and get a charge if I needed it. Now, the way these charger networks work is you sign up for a membership, which is usually free. You put your credit card in there. When you stop and use them, it just simply bills your credit card for your time. It's really a neat way to go because a lot of these are located not only at city halls and public centers like where I'm at, but you're also going to find them at supermarkets, at shopping malls, even a lot of gas stations have them. You just never knew they were there. Question 6, what does it cost to charge an electric car? Well, that can be a smoke and mirrors equation whether you're at home or at a public charging station. So let's start at home first. Our Kia Soul here has a 27 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. My electric rate here at night is about 10 cents per kilowatt hour, so a rough quick estimate for a charge is $2.70. If that takes me 100 miles, that works out to just under 3 cents per mile. So if you compare that to a gasoline-powered Kia Soul at $3 a gallon and 30 miles to the gallon for efficiency, that works out to about 10 cents per mile. So while my quick and dirty electric calculation has a lot of variables missing, it's significantly cheaper per mile driving electric. Now, public chargers are an entirely different story because you're not only paying for the electricity, you're paying for the service and the convenience and sometimes the speed. The Blink charging network here with their level 2 charger, they charge 4 cents a minute. So if I were to leave this on the charger for 4 hours, I'd be right around $9 and some change. Now their level 3 charger, which charges in about 30 minutes, that's a $6.99 flat fee. Not the cheapest way to charge your car, but if you're somewhere and you need the power, well, it's probably a pretty good deal. Now, all these networks have different charges and fees. You can get on their websites and get exact detail on that, and you always want to look that up before you go out and plug in. Question 7. Does roadside assistance include charging? Well, sometimes yes and sometimes no. Car companies, when it comes to roadside assistance, they've sort of created a separate program for the electric car customer. They know your needs are different, they know your expectations are different, and they know you're likely to run out of juice once in a while. So most of their programs do include assistance for that problem. But what they typically do is they will tow you to the nearest charging station. There are occasions where in some metro areas there are mobile trucks with DC fast chargers that can pull up and charge you on the side of the road. But you do need to read that car maker's information to get the full story. Also keep in mind, companies like AAA and other programs like that, they are also starting to offer special programs for electric car customers. Question 8. Does an electric car require a lot of maintenance? The fast answer is no. When you look under the hood of an electric car, it has less than 1/10 of the moving parts that you're going to find in any gasoline-powered car. So therefore, there's no routine oil changes, transmission services, belt replacements, filter replacements, or the type of service intervals that you have with a gasoline-powered car. Now yes, an electric car does have some scheduled service that has to be done over its lifetime, but compared to a gas car, it's virtually nil. Question number 9. How long do the batteries last? Well, that's a good question, because if you ever have to replace one, you're going to be spending thousands of dollars. The good news is that most car makers right now warranty their batteries 8 to 10 years in a variety of different ways. The Kia Soul I'm driving right here, 10 years, 100,000 miles, down to 70% capacity. What that means is, if the battery ever falls below 70% its original capacity within the warranty period, they'll replace or repair it. Now, other car makers are a little bit different, so you want to always read that fine print if that's a major concern of yours, because some car makers do a little bit better, and of course you can read the news out there on that. But the bottom line is, unless you keep your car beyond the warranty period or you drive several 100,000 miles, it's unlikely you'll ever have to replace the battery. Question 10. Can you drive an electric car in the rain? Well, of course the answer is yes. Most electric cars have sealed motors, controllers, wiring, and battery assemblies. They thought of this. They know that we don't all live in a sun state, so you can drive a car through a car wash. You can drive it in the rain. You can get it in the puddle occasionally. They don't want you out there stuck every time the car gets wet. Obviously, there are limits to this, just as there would be for a gasoline car. You wouldn't want to drive it through deep water for prolonged periods, and if you got it stranded in water, you'd want the car thoroughly checked out at your dealer before driving it again. This of course goes for plugging the car in during heavy rain. While there are safeguards in place, it's wise to be in a dry place and not be standing in puddles. Read your owner's manuals for specifics on both charging and operating in the rain for best results. Question 11. What about crash safety and the battery? It's a good one. Well, first of all, just like in gasoline-powered cars where the tank is mounted low and out of the way in most cases, with electric cars just like this one, the batteries are usually down on the floor, in this case under the back seat, down where it's out of the crush zones, be it a front or rear collision or most side collisions. And so really it's just as safe as a gas tank in terms of its location. But let's compare it to gas in terms of what if it does rupture. If you have a ruptured gas tank in a severe crash, it can be very explosive very quickly. I'm talking milliseconds. You can have a fiery situation that there is no escape from. It happens. Rescuers, when they get on the scene, there's very little they can do, and I hate to be graphic like that. But the difference is with the battery is while they can catch on fire and ultimately explode, it tends to be a much slower process. You've seen them in the news where these cars that were crash tested, the battery was impaled. It took hours or days before that battery finally cooked up to the point where it caught on fire and then ultimately exploded. Now that's not to say it can't happen on the scene of a crash, but the bottom line is that you more than likely have more time to deal with that situation in a battery than with a gas tank. Question 12. What about all the government tax incentives? Well, right now the federal government has a $7,500 tax credit for qualifying electric vehicles. Some states have smaller ones like California, which has $2,500. Colorado has $6,000. So you could see up to $13,500 in tax savings depending on where you live. Maybe. Keep in mind, these are not like dealer rebates that are taken off the price when you buy or lease the vehicle. No, these are tax credits that come later into the next year when you do your taxes. Also keep in mind that not everyone qualifies for all of these credits. Your income, how you file, and whether you buy the vehicle for a business or personal use can affect how much, if any, credits you can use. There are other factors as well. Your dealer should be able to walk you through the specifics, but if you're hinging on it, get advice from a tax specialist. I'm not one of those. Well, there you have it. Those are the 12 most common questions I hear every time an electric car lands in my driveway. Now keep in mind, I'm just a lowly auto scribe here. I'm not a 100% expert on electric cars, so I've spoken pretty broad brush here, and there may be some instances where I'm not completely correct. But if you have a question I didn't get to, use the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer it. If you're an electric car owner or you've got experiences of your own, please feel free to add your own comments down below as well. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride.